A series of mystery sightings in the sky are raising national security concerns now.
Navy pilots say they saw something that defies the limits of known aviation technology.
For decades, the U.S. government has ignored reports of unidentified flying objects harassing our military.
Lying to the public is part of what we do. You pay us to do it.
Finally, a groundbreaking Pentagon disclosure makes one thing clear: UFOs are real.
The U.S. Navy has finally acknowledged that videos appearing to show UFOs flying through the air are real.
The Navy says it still doesn't know what the objects are, and officials aren't speculating.
For the first time ever, members of the military are breaking their silence.
I never spoke a word about my incident for almost 40 years.
With shocking revelations.
There was no doubt that an unidentified flying object took our missiles off alert.
And horrifying encounters.
It's nothing that words can even describe.
It's like an orb, man. Look at that. It's pulsating.
But are we prepared?
A single UFO would have the ability to wipe out the Air Force.
For a war of the worlds.
The real worst case scenario is that we're targeted for total extermination. In June 2021, the Pentagon released an official report detailing 144 UFO encounters by the U.S. military. Intelligence officials claim this is all they know about UFOs. But critics aren't buying it, including government insider Rich Emberlin. As a 30-year law enforcement veteran who has worked alongside the CIA, FBI, and Secret Service, he believes we are in the midst of a massive military cover-up. Aliens are a threat, and our very existence is at risk. Now, Rich is on a mission to expose the government's greatest secret. Why are aliens stalking our military? And is our planet in jeopardy? Today, Rich is meeting with retired Air Force security officer Mario Woods, who knows firsthand what the military is hiding.
My God. I can't believe I'm on this road, man.
For the first time in over 40 years, Mario is returning to Ellsworth Air Force Base, the site of his terrifying alien encounter that proves UFOs are a threat to us all.
Unbelievable seeing this place. I mean, there's almost a sense of wariness, I guess, or excitement all in the same way to come back and be on the absolute roads that you were on all these years ago when all this happened.
I'll bet it is strange.
It is. And that's the facility. That's November 1. Wow. I cannot believe it's still here. It's still the same fence. I can't even believe it. 43 years ago. My heart's beating about 1,000 RPMs right now. Wow. Rich, I am speechless at this facility, how it is today.
As in, it's still here?
Yeah, even here and existing.
During the Cold War, Ellsworth Air Force Base in South Dakota was home to 150 nuclear missiles, all locked, loaded, and ready for the command to launch at a moment's notice. In 1977, Mario Woods oversaw security at one of the launch control facilities, called November 1, on the day that would change his life forever.
I was standing about right here, and directly due east of us, right there, at about a 30-degree angle, I see this object, and it's miles away, and it was extremely bright, brighter than anything else in the sky, and it was flickering. So I just sat there and looked at it for a minute, and I smoked a cigarette, and I said, well, that's awful weird. Well, if you look around us, there is nothing out here. The brightest thing on the ground here would be this facility. So just for fun, I flipped the facility lights at it. Walked back out here and looked, smoked a cigarette, didn't do nothing. So I started to go back in, and when I did, I turned and looked back, and it was gone.
Instantly.
Instantly, it was just gone. I didn't see it go out, it just was gone.
But that wasn't the end of Mario's encounter. Just after midnight, the launch facility receives a high threat alarm. There's been a breach at November 5, a missile silo 15 minutes from the facility. Mario and his partner, Sergeant Michael Johnson, receive the order to investigate. But as they approach November 5, the site of the security breach, they are not prepared for what stands before them.
Been a long time since here, Rich. My heart's about to come out of my chest from this.
So this is it right here.
That's it right there.
Hovering over the missile silo is a giant glowing sphere of light, approximately 100 feet tall and several hundred feet in diameter.
You could feel heat from it from right here.
Mm-hmm.
And I only say that because you could feel it almost through the windshield of that truck.
Radiation.
Yeah, gives me chills seeing it and feeling it. Oh, it really bothers my heart.
I'd say that's normal.
This is a
All right. It's a lot.
This is a drawing. This is where we pulled the vehicle to. And this is the fence line of the facility.
Mario vividly remembers his paralyzing confrontation with the ominous glowing sphere. But the terrifying events that followed remained buried for many years, until a hypnotist helped him uncover hidden memories.
As you're laying there totally relaxed, your mind starts to wander. And it goes back to that time that you were in the military. Before anything happens, you're sitting in the patrol vehicle. And what happened next?
I was afraid to leave the vehicle. I should have just stepped out. Scared.
It's okay, you're safe now, Mario. We're just looking at a movie. Okay? Take a deep breath and just pause the picture.
The atmosphere was like vacuumed away from us.
So it's becoming difficult to breathe?
Yeah, there was no oxygen, there was no air. And I pulled myself up on the windowsill of that truck and I flashed my mag light at this thing, not following any sequence, no more different than what was at the launch control facility where they're launched from. And almost immediately, the pressure stopped.
Did you feel like you'd communicated with them?
I felt as if I asked for
relief.
Seeing and interacting with a UFO over the nuclear missile silo was shocking enough. But there was more in store for Mario and his partner, Sergeant Michael Johnson. A paralyzing encounter with several alien beings.
So how many were there?
4.
Okay.
And a tall one behind.
So how tall was the tall one?
6 foot, baby.
Can you describe him?
Yes. He had a long head. He had a very long head. And he was down just the bathroom. And the little guys didn't talk anything.
We were sitting here, and I just remember whispers. That's all I heard.
Well, what's around you now?
I'm in some type of room, some kind of inspection area. They're just checking me. And I ask, where's Michael? they told me not to worry. I see that big tall and he's looking at me. I don't like this guy. He has a uniform on that has creases in it, like a ranking officer or something. It's this tall guy. He's really not a good person. I feel a pinch on my lower left side now. It's like somebody's got a hold of me or something. And it's fast. It's not kind.
And then everything just went black from that point. Next thing I know, I'm 5 to 7 miles off in that direction at a place called Newell Lake, which is a reservoir for this whole area.
Military security locates Mario Woods and Sergeant Michael Johnson and takes them to be checked out by medical personnel. Once cleared, they're told to never speak about this experience to anyone, ever again.
God, I can still smell the air. It's nothing that words can even describe. Your senses are just can't even come to grips with that. Whatever that is.
You keep looking up.
You have to.
Did it feel threatening at all?
Mentally and visually, it was so overwhelming that you didn't know whether to fear, mess yourself, shoot at it. And every one of those things is not the right thing. It's not the right thing to do.
You're out of options.
Yeah. Whatever they had in mind, they did. And they'll continue to do it. And they've always done it. And they're not done yet.
Mario Woods' life-changing encounter has haunted him for over 40 years. But the military's attempt to bury the truth is even more frightening. Why was the government suddenly silencing witnesses? Were they trying to hide the aliens' interest in our military bases? The classic cover-up implies we may be in more danger than we know.
Your story of your encounter with the UFO is incredible. I can't imagine what it was like.
So if you think my story was bad and scary, I'd really like you to speak with Captain David Shinley. He was at Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota.
And you can put us in touch with him?
I can put you in touch with him, and he has a very interesting story that was very scary.
Like Mario Woods, Captain David Shinley was also silenced by the military when one of the world's greatest nightmares came true.
My name is David D. Shinley, Captain, U.S. Air Force, retired. In 1966, I was involved in an incident while stationed at Minot Air Force Base, North Dakota.
In 1966, Captain Shinley had the monumental responsibility of launching nuclear missiles from inside a top-secret control facility. Today, he's gained access to a near-identical facility at the Minuteman Missile Museum in South Dakota and is showing Rich how he performed the most dangerous job on Earth and what happened when a UFO took control of a full arsenal of nuclear weapons.
We're going 60 feet down.
60 feet.
60 feet down.
4.
You wonder why it's so deep?
Yeah.
It's so that if we get nuked, they're going to have to really dig us out of the ground. And so the deeper we go, the better it is.
Roger that.
Correct. Well, Rich, this is where I spent a good part of 3 years of my life.
Amazing. So this is your office.
Yes, Rich.
Wow.
This is where the deputy crew commander sits. And when they receive a message from the primary alerting system to launch their missiles,
yes, sir,
they'll access this lockbox. They determine what missiles they're going to launch. And we have 10 switches here, one for each of the 10 missiles.
At the height of the Cold War, those nuclear missiles are pointed at Russia. Just one mistake down here could trigger World War III.
You're a young man in your 20s in charge of missiles that could destroy parts or the entire world.
Well, that's exactly right. We had tremendous responsibility, and we felt it.
But nothing could have prepared Captain Shinley for what happens during one terrifying night that starts out innocently enough, one cold September morning.
So take me to the day you wake up, you're having breakfast, and you're watching the news at Minot, and what do you see?
I heard the TV news announcer say something to the fact that residents of Mohall, North Dakota saw strange lights overnight. And they were attributing it to a UFO. And these lights were west of town. And when I heard that, I thought, oh my goodness, I'm scheduled for duty at November flight west of Minot.
Once Captain Shinley arrives at the control facility, news about the UFO is quickly making the rounds.
The flight security manager, he approached me and said, "Did you hear what happened overnight?"
The manager tells Captain Shinley that a mysterious disc-shaped UFO, about 100 feet in diameter, invaded the skies over the west end of the launch control facility.
I could tell in their voices and in their faces that it was a very, very frightening experience. And they didn't want to go outside and approach it. It was that frightening.
For a brief moment, the UFO idled undeterred until it suddenly disappeared into the open prairie. But what happened next will forever torment Captain Shinley.
So this is the launch control console that the commander sits at and monitors his missiles. You can see that the green lights here indicate the missiles are ready to be launched. Well, the first thing we see was we have no green lights. They're all off. But there are a number of indicator lights that were on, yellow and red lights.
But every light that was on meant bad.
Yes, and especially without a green light, they're unlaunchable.
Just moments earlier, all 10 nuclear missiles are ready for launch. But suddenly, something has disarmed them, leaving not only the United States, but the entire world vulnerable to enemy attack.
That was a very serious problem because we had never seen a situation like this ever before.
There was no doubt that an unidentified flying object took our missiles off alert.
The mind-bending event leaves Captain Shinley wondering if the United States is facing an existential threat from a new enemy.
I mean, if they can do that, what kind of threat do you think they bring to us?
Well, if they were able to take our nuclear-tipped missiles off alert, I have tended to wonder about that, what else they could do. Could they actually remove our nuclear warheads?
And what's their fascination with them? Are they trying to like prep the battlefield, soften it up?
That's a good question. You know, the military has long had this problem of these things, harassing them. In fact, my commander and I were told as soon as we came above ground the next morning that we were never to say another word about this incident again. In fact, we were told, as far as you're concerned, it never happened. Don't you ever talk about this again to anybody, or even between yourselves.
55 years. That's how long Captain Shinley keeps his secret. A secret that festers inside him until 2013, when he heroically comes forward to 6 former members of Congress
at the National Press Club.
I was involved in an incident while stationed at Minot Air Force Base, North Dakota. I was told to never speak of the incident again, and also told that as far as I was concerned, it never happened. Because of that, I am before you today with a bit of trepidation. I must say a lot of trepidation, as I have never before shown my face in person on this matter.
Was it tough talking during that?
It was very tough. I was emotional then too, like I think I sort of am now.
I can see where this would eat at you for so many years when you knew something happened and you can't tell anybody, and then...
I couldn't tell my wife at the time. I couldn't tell anybody because I did have personal integrity. But that personal integrity now leans toward the truth.
Right.
And I'm obligated now to tell the truth.
You were following orders before.
Yes.
Now you're following the truth.
Yes.
But what is the truth? And why is the military hiding it? That is exactly what Rich is on a mission to find out. After meeting with Captain David Shinley, Rich Emberlin is convinced UFOs have the power to wage war at any moment. In fact, it almost happened when U.S. Armed Forces opened fire on a fleet of UFOs in the Battle of Los Angeles. In the frantic weeks that followed the deadly attack on Pearl Harbor, many Americans feared a Japanese invasion of the continental United States was imminent. But according to Nick Pope, a former UFO investigator for the British Ministry of Defense, this was not the only enemy the U.S. had to fear.
War nerves were in play. Everyone was on edge. There was a lot of panic and hysteria.
On February 25, 1942, nightmare becomes reality. When military radar picks up what appears to be an enemy airplane 120 miles west of Los Angeles.
This strange object appeared, and basically coastal defenses opened fire.
While Los Angeles erupts in panic, a mandatory blackout goes into effect, while the military fires over 1,400 rounds of ammunition into the night sky.
That night during the Battle of Los Angeles, it was like a Hollywood movie. There was chaos everywhere.
The next morning, Angelenos awaken, expecting to see a Japanese invasion force lying offshore. But to their surprise, it's the exact opposite.
No Japanese aircraft or weapons were found. There was no evidence that this had been a Japanese attack, but this strange object had been seen.
Many believe the mysterious object that caused citywide panic was in fact a UFO. But the military vehemently denies such accusations.
The amazing thing to me is, if it was the Japanese attacking us, how did they get those Japanese Zeros, those airplanes, to stop midair with a bright light, take 1,400 rounds, and never hit one of them, and then they just left?
To this day, whatever happened in the Battle of LA remains a complete mystery.
The Battle of Los Angeles is one of many historical incidents the military has dismissed. But what were they trying to hide?
The government reaction to these UFO incidents is the traditional one: deny, downplay, debunk.
I think the reason the CIA or other intelligence communities would cover this stuff up is from a military point of view. You can't protect us, you know it.
In the wake of World War II, the military suddenly realized we were facing a new adversary. And as more UFO stories surfaced, the government cover-ups continued. The most notorious took place in 1947, when a UFO crash-landed near Roswell, New Mexico.
Roswell is literally the ground zero of the modern UFO phenomenon.
The Navy has no saucer-shaped aircraft or missile in any of these programs.
The Air Force itself has officially admitted that flying saucers exist.
47 years ago, something crashed into the desert outside Roswell, New Mexico. And for 47 years, the Pentagon lied about it.
This was the incident where something crashed. So this was the day that we went beyond lights in the sky and we faced the reality of something physical. And the US military admitted as much.
The startling press release quickly turns into headlines around the world. But just 24 hours later, the government has second thoughts.
The next day, literally, they changed their story and said it's weather balloon.
Instead of a flying disc, the government now maintains the unidentified flying object was a mistaken weather balloon.
Obviously, at a much higher level, somebody said, hey, you can't say flying disc. You've got to come up with a cover story.
In my opinion, the President of the United States found out about it by the next day and said, get rid of it, and they did.
U.S. military and government denial of the Roswell crash has confounded the public for nearly 80 years.
People say sometimes, oh, you can't keep a secret that big. Yes, you can. I mean, history shows us time and time again that huge secrets can be kept.
So what exactly is the government covering up? Someone who knows the answer is Agent X, a former CIA operative who has agreed to speak with Rich, providing he can keep his identity a secret.
It's pretty incredible that he's going to talk to me because it's a big risk for him to talk about things like UFOs.
When I first came in and worked at headquarters, nobody really owned a desk. You know, you sat at wherever the convenient place to sit was. In the older days, back in the 40s, 50s, all through the 60s, things were piled in boxes and desk drawers. The place was full of stuff and nobody had any idea what it was. When the agency entered the modern era, cubicles showed up and certain things went into convenient, old-fashioned, heavy-gauge cardboard boxes. And those boxes all wound up going to a place in the library called the Historical Intelligence Collection. I was in there one day and there was a metal rack with all these boxes. And I was just scanning around and I saw one that said Roswell. And I thought, wow, are you kidding me? I opened it up and what was inside, I will not, under any circumstances, tell you what I saw in there specifically. There were materials, there were papers, there were other items. I 100% in my heart and soul guarantee Roswell happened. There was a craft, absolutely cadavers. Beyond that, I have no idea where everything else went. Nobody knows where it is.
If a UFO actually crash-landed at Roswell and alien cadavers were recovered, why was it hushed up by the government? Rich wonders if the military knew what the aliens were planning. After learning the truth about Roswell from Agent X, Rich is left with one lingering question. What were UFOs doing there? Perhaps the aliens crash-landed before they reached their final destination. Could they have been headed to the White Sands Missile Range instead? The world's largest military installation and the test site for the first atomic bomb.
The proximity of White Sands secret weapons testing site, the fact that that's right next to where Roswell happened, that's not a coincidence either.
To help determine why the aliens may have been scoping out White Sands, Rich looks back to the 1940s, when the U.S. government first authorized a top-secret nuclear testing program, codenamed the Manhattan Project. Its goal was to develop the world's first atomic bomb. On July 16, 1945, their efforts finally came to fruition. After 3 years of research, the first ever nuclear detonation, known as the Trinity Test, exploded in the New Mexico desert. Did the Trinity Test somehow catch the attention of aliens in outer space? Is this when they became aware of our nuclear weapons? Could it mean they have their eyes on our military?
The impact of the Trinity test was tremendous in its scope. The effects were felt 100 miles away. It broke windows 120 miles away.
The Trinity Test released an explosive force of 21 kilotons, equivalent to 10,000 tons of TNT, and created a blinding flash of light with a giant mushroom cloud 38,000 feet tall.
Put yourself in the mind's eye of an extraterrestrial war planner looking at Earth, and they see the Trinity Test. That's the point where they have to come up with a new plan, because that's the point that they realize they are facing a nuclear power. Earth now has nuclear weapons, and with the missile technology, they have perhaps the capability to get these things into space.
July 9th, 1962. Detonating a nuclear weapon in outer space became a reality when a test known as Starfish Prime was launched from Johnston Island, 900 miles southwest of Hawaii.
Starfish Prime was a staggering event. I mean, this was the detonation 250 miles in space. And suddenly, here we are, not just detonating nuclear bombs on the ground, but in space. It's like we've ratcheted things up a notch. So that's the point where any extraterrestrials looking at Earth say, this is a planet that needs watching closely.
100 times more powerful than the Trinity Test, Starfish Prime was the largest nuclear weapon ever detonated in outer space.
It caused an electromagnetic pulse that knocked out street lights and led to radio interference.
It makes us really wonder what was being seen in the other dimension. It's kind of like ringing the dinner bell and saying, here we are, come and get us.
Nuclear blasts may have attracted aliens to our planet, but what was their plan once they arrived? Is this when UFOs started surveilling our military? Rich heads to Franklin, Kentucky to find out. To most, Franklin, Kentucky appears to be a typical southern town. But beneath this facade lies a dark mystery. In 1948, it was here that 25-year-old fighter pilot Captain Thomas Mantell made headlines around the world after he died chasing a UFO in the skies above Franklin, Kentucky. For over 70 years, his tragic plane crash has left the community clamoring for answers, including Mantell's grandsons, Eric and Terry Mantell.
Hi, guys.
Hey, how you doing?
Rich Emberlin.
Eric Mantell, nice to meet you.
It's an honor to meet both of y'all.
Rich believes they can help him understand how far the military will go to continually hide the truth about UFOs from the public.
Some of the medals here are just absolutely amazing.
Wow. For a guy that's, how old was he, 25?
25.
He already had 2 presidential unit citations. This is a major award, the Distinguished Flying Cross, for someone that's 25 years old, already has all that. That guy's legit, and he was going places. A competent pilot, hero.
It just solidifies who he was as a pilot, as a person, who had 2 kids and a wife that he was madly in love with, and he still put his life on the line, whatever happened that day.
On January 7th, 1948, control tower operators at Godman Army Airfield in Fort Knox, Kentucky, receive a report of an unidentified flying object hovering over the base.
There was a bunch of calls all over the state of Kentucky that was flooding into the police department. We see something, it's huge, it's metallic, what is it?
Controllers immediately radio the Kentucky Air National Guard. Captain Thomas Mantell, who is leading a flight of 4 P-51 aircraft, is sent to investigate. Within minutes, Mantell and his wingmen close in on the mysterious object.
He reported that it was shiny, metallic, tremendous in size, reported seeing observation windows.
But then, Mantell gives an astonishing order to one of the pilots in his formation. Return to base and arm your plane with hot guns, the military term which means prepare to fire.
So that's what I always thought was really interesting, because for me, it's almost like the smoking gun of this whole case. They knew what was going on. They knew it was a serious matter, and they just wouldn't do hot guns for no reason.
The reason he's requesting hot guns is he feels threatened, and he's a seasoned guy. He's not going to ask for that unless he needs it.
While the other plane prepares for intergalactic battle, Mantell climbs higher and higher in pursuit of the UFO.
So he chased this thing, and around 20,000 feet, they lost contact. That's where the mystery kind of starts.
Captain Mantell's plane is last seen as it hurtles to the ground, crash landing in a field in Franklin, Kentucky. The same town where, ironically, he was born just 25 years earlier. One of the last people to see the plane was local resident Doyle Burnett, who was just 7 years old when the P-51 aircraft tragically fell from the sky.
I heard an explosion, and we looked up and we saw a plane coming down, and one wing flew off of the plane and went across the field from us.
Doyle's wife, Patsy, also witnessed the crash.
This is the house you grew up in?
Yes, this is where I grew up.
And this is where you were at when the plane came down?
Yes.
How old were you?
I was 4 years old.
Really?
But I remember it well.
I don't think you could forget that.
No, you can't.
No.
The noise when it hit the roof, it was just, it was worse than a hailstorm.
Within hours, the horrific crash attracted onlookers from around the area, while the press blurted out news of a military plane crashing while chasing a UFO.
Did the military ever show up?
Oh yes, they came to our house, and they woke us up in the middle of the night, and it was a very cold night. Well, my mother asked the military officers what made the plane crash, and their standard answer was he flew too high and ran out of oxygen.
There have been many attempts to explain what caused Captain Mantell's plane to crash. No official reports mention anything about a UFO.
And this opens more questions than answers.
A report came out afterwards saying that
After this one?
Yes, yes.
A military one?
Military report, yes, sir, that he was perhaps chasing Venus. Then another report came out saying that he was perhaps chasing a weather balloon.
So that Venus stuff is ridiculous. He sees weather balloons all the time, too. They're always launching them on your bases. They do it in the morning before planes take off.
Everybody was talking about it, about what was happening, and several people thought it was a UFO. It's just...
So that was the word going around?
That was the word, yeah. And I really believe that after seeing all of the news information about it since then. They always say it's a weather balloon or something else, but there was no weather balloon, I can tell you. I'm almost positive that it was a flying saucer. It wasn't anything that came out of this world, I'm sure, you know.
Why do you think it was a flying saucer?
There's too much speculation about why, and the weather balloon didn't fit, and seeing Venus in 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you would never see Venus at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
That'd be special circumstances.
Sure, that's right. And you'd have to be higher than what that pilot was in order to see it. Yeah. It's a mystery that needs to be explained.
I can't believe you guys haven't seen this before, but wow, this is the display. It's nice. It's great.
I love that picture there.
This is a piece of your grandfather's plane they recovered from the crash scene.
This is amazing. This is very emotional for me.
It has to be. How can it's emotional for me, and I didn't know the man.
While Captain Mantell will forever be immortalized in Franklin, Kentucky history, now his grandsons finally have the opportunity to pay homage to his great sacrifice. Franklin resident Joe Phillips has offered to take Eric and Terry to the crash site, where their grandfather, a true American hero, lost his life chasing a UFO.
We're basically right in front of it, there. But when it hit and shook the ground, people that come around to see something like that, it was a terrible day.
There's so many emotions going through my mind, really, right now.
To know we're standing right here on the ground, it means a lot, not only to Eric and myself, but our whole family. His plane, his PF-51 was sitting right where we're standing, which is, it's amazing.
I just wonder, what he was thinking. If he came to.
Here's someone, Thomas Mantell, served at D-Day, lives through that, and then dies years later in peacetime over the continental United States, chasing a UFO in a situation where the government says there's no such thing. And yet you've got to live with this. You've got to deal with the fact that this happened in your family, your grandfather.
I wish I could assuage your loss, but there's just no words for that. Take your time.
I don't know how people deal with that. I don't know how they get their closure, but I hope they do.
Let's say a prayer. Dear God, thank you for this day. We do know that Tommy and his mother and his wife are together right now, and that's the faith that we have, and that's what carries us on. And we love you. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
The world may never know what Captain Thomas Mantell encountered 25,000 feet up in the air. Could his death have been a warning that the worst is yet to come? And if so, Rich wants to know, is the military prepared to fight back? While Captain Mantell was the first pilot to die chasing a UFO, none have ever been ordered to fire on one until 1957, when Major Milton Torres Jr. survived the greatest UFO face-off of all time and became the centerpiece of yet another military cover-up. Rich is bringing in Roderick Martin, a field investigator for the highly respected Mutual UFO Network, known as MUFON. After witnessing a UFO chasing an Air Force fighter jet at the age of 12, Roderick has made it his lifelong quest to uncover why aliens are stalking our military. Today, Roderick is arranged to meet with Major Torres' son, Jeffrey, at the organization's annual conference in Las Vegas.
Jeff, thank you for meeting with us today. We have been investigating several different incidents of pilots chasing or engaging with UFOs, but unfortunately, some of those lost their lives. In this case with your father, he survived to tell it. And that's really what's intriguing us today. So let's start from the beginning. Can you take us back to his career so that we can kind of get a little understanding there?
My father served 20 years in the United States Air Force, and he had over 300 combat missions in Vietnam. So he was a well-decorated officer. And he also worked for NASA during the space program. But,
wow, impressive.
You know, I could say I lived in the land of giants, because I did, and he was one of them.
At the height of the Cold War, hysteria surrounding enemy invasions were mounting. Any indication of an unidentified aerial craft puts the military on high alert. May 20th, 1957. American fighter pilot Major Milton Torres Jr. is stationed at a U.S. military base in England, when suddenly he's given the order to scramble after a mysterious object is detected on ground radar. Tearing across the sky at nearly 700 miles per hour, Torres fearlessly pursues the unidentified enemy.
He said the radar signature was as big as an aircraft carrier at sea. It was huge.
The strange blip on Torres's radar screen is unlike anything he's ever seen.
He was chasing this thing on a radar, and as it was doing, the one thing I do remember is it was doing incredible maneuvers that would defy physics. And that was his words, they defied physics.
Armed with an arsenal of 24 missiles, ground control orders Torres to engage.
It scared the hell out of him because, you know, you're thinking you're starting World War III. You know, or what the hell is this thing? What am I firing at?
Yeah, but yet he went with courage.
Oh yeah.
He went right into it.
But he's thinking, this is the beginning of the end.
Torres locks in his target and prepares to fire.
Once you lock on and you fire, the computer takes over. And as the computer was taking over, this thing, boop, boop, and he said 2 sweeps of the radar, it was gone. He said his knees were shaking. He said, what the hell was that? And you know, he was totally spooked. And he calls ground radar, and he says, ground radar, I don't know what happened, but this thing just disappeared off my scope.
Wow,
when my dad tells me it was an alien craft, there was nothing it couldn't have been. It was an alien craft.
Wow.
Following the incident, Torres heads back to base, where he's immediately intercepted by a superior officer.
One of the enlisted men brought an NSA guy with an IBM salesman, you know, black suit and tie.
The traditional men in black that we all hear about.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And the guy came in, and he basically said, do you like flying, Lieutenant Torres? My dad said, I love flying. He said, well, listen, he says, if you ever reveal what has happened, you'll never fly again. We'll pull your rank, we'll pull your pilot's license, and you'll be dog. And my dad says, yes, sir. He says, you will not talk about this ever again. This didn't happen. Don't tell your wife, don't tell anybody.
50 years.
Yeah.
How did he hold it together all of this time without just breaking?
It ate him up. He locked it in his head. He just had a lockbox there, and you couldn't get it out of him.
And how was life after that for your father?
I think the most profound thing was not telling his father. You know, because my dad was close with my grandfather. You know, they were close. And for him to not even tell his father, just, it bewilders the mind. And, you know, I think he took that to his grave that he never was able to tell his dad. I think he really took that to his grave.
Although Torres is prohibited from speaking about his UFO encounter, it doesn't stop him from secretly writing about it.
He knew from day one it's a cover-up. And he knew, possibly, that this could die with him. He had the foresight to say, you know what, we're gonna get an affidavit in place so it doesn't disappear.
In 2003, Torres's account resurfaces after the British Ministry of Defense declassifies thousands of pages of UFO documents and releases them to the public.
I had been asked to help with the promotion of the declassification and release of the Ministry of Defense's UFO files. So what I was able to do was to act as a sort of intermediary and forewarn Milton Torres that this was going to come out, and then do some media work with him.
In April 2009, Nick Pope invited Major Torres to speak at a UFO conference in Gaithersburg, Maryland, where he was finally able to share his story with the world.
So without any further ado from myself, I would like now to hand over to Major Milton Torres.
If ever you want an unimpeachable witness, I mean, Milton Torres was it. A decorated hero. He really was the best of the best.
I have been convinced since then that was an alien, and nobody's going to talk me out of that one. I did it myself. And I thank you for your...
He could not tell this story without breaking down. I mean, just the emotion of it was too much for him. I was pleased that I was able to bring him some closure before he died.
Thank you very much, Nick, for being instrumental in bringing this about, because if you weren't there to bring this out, he would have carried it to his grave. At the end of his life, you know, he was able to finally get some relief, and he was unburdened by it, you know.
I mean, obviously for you, this is a deeply personal family thing, but let's not forget, and I don't want to kind of reduce your father to being just a case, but there's no getting away from the fact that this is one of the biggest and most spectacular UFO incidents of all time.
Yeah.
You know, people talk about Roswell and the other big cases, but this is right up there.
Yeah.
What could be bigger and more impactful than getting ordered to shoot down a UFO?
After the MUFON conference, Roderick concludes that if the military ordered Major Torres to open fire, they must have known UFOs are a threat. But how will we know if it's an alien invasion? To find out if UFOs threaten our airspace, Rich and Roderick meet with investigative journalist Melissa Tittle at a central location. As the daughter of an Air Force veteran, and with over 2 decades of experience reporting on UFOs, Melissa brings a wealth of contacts, including Ted Rowe, Executive Director of NARCAP, the National Aviation Reporting Center on Anomalous Phenomena. Together, they will examine his nearly 20 years of research on pilot-related incidents with unidentified aerial phenomena, more commonly known as UAPs.
Ted Rowe, we are so honored to have you here today. So I have to say, how did you get involved in this? Specifically researching the safety incidents with aircraft.
I got involved with this type of research because UAP experiences were something that happened to me, and I wanted to understand it better.
Can you tell us about one of your particular experiences?
It involved an observation over Oakland, California in January of 1999. We were southbound on 880. My friend Susan was driving, and about a mile away, this thing stopped right next to the Oakland Federal buildings. And at that point, it jumped. It moved faster than I could blink. What I saw was a cylinder, about 45 feet long, I'm guessing. It had two big white lights underneath it. As we moved along this way, eventually it turned and paralleled the car. And then, for some reason, it got very dark really fast. And we gained about 3 hours in time. We drove for maybe 1 minute and 15 seconds linear time, and 3 hours and some passed.
Oof.
Wow, that's amazing.
Did your life completely change after this moment?
Absolutely. I felt very unwell.
And that literally has become your life now?
Yeah, and it's been my life arc since. It's the only thing I do. We've been collecting data. I have over 100 years of pilot reports of unidentified aerial phenomena.
And what are some of the patterns that you've noticed in some of your research specifically?
Pilots commonly report 4 basic varieties of UAP. They report balls of light, they report spheres, cylinders, and disks, common geometric forms. There are others, but those are the primary ones that we see in the data. Balls of light made up nearly 50% of the cases that we are aware of at this point.
And what are the interactions with the pilots and the balls of light?
We've had accounts of them coming and barrel rolling around aircraft. Other types of observations include just having them come at you from a distance and pass you. But there seems to be a personal aspect to the pacing of the aircraft.
A personal aspect.
Coming up next to the aircraft and staying with it. Okay, so there's an interactive quality between it and the aircraft versus something that's just going by and you saw it.
Why are they pacing these aircraft? Why are they trying to interact with them?
My guess is that they're information gathering.
What do you think the message is?
Look what we can do.
It's kind of scary.
Yeah, it's very sobering. We should be paying very close attention to this. This is not a joke. Right now, it doesn't look good.
We've been talking a lot about military incidents, but do you find that commercial pilots are coming forward?
Yeah, in fact, we have Mr. Eric Delgado, who was a pilot who had a UAP encounter in the air that I investigated. He's got most of 30 years in the cockpit. He's got a military career behind him, and he's actually willing to come forward and talk about this a little bit with us.
Why don't we get him on a video call?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Hello.
Hi, Eric. Can you share with us a little bit about what happened?
My name's Eric Delgado. I'm a captain on the Boeing 767 for a cargo outfit here in the southern United States. Our destination was Memphis. First officer and I were just talking about, the trip, and I look over my left shoulder and I see this massive white light.
Turn on the tail light. Oh, it is on. Okay, cool.
That's why I thought it was an airplane, because this thing's rotating into us, and I'm like, oh my God, he's descending into us, and it really scared me. Got my hands on the flight controls and on the throttles, and was expecting the TCAS, the traffic collision and avoidance system on our aircraft, to start screaming at us to descend now. So I was like really scared, and heart's racing.
It's like an orb, man. Look at that. It's pulsating, and he's not on TCAS, man. Flip the TCAS switch up and see if you see anything on the display.
This system that warns of traffic around or near our aircraft was not going off either orally, and was not depicting anything visually.
That is a unidentified flying object, bro. Jeez, man, that is freaky, man.
And it was then that I realized, oh my God, this is an unidentified flying object. And I'm like, I've been flying for nearly 30 years of my life, and I've never seen anything like this.
That is phenomenal, man. Look at that. There's our airplane, and there's no TCAS. There's weather about 40 miles off our left wingtip.
It was out of this world.
Wow.
There's no way we can compete with that type of speed and maneuverability. What if you had like some type of a weapon on there, plasma energy of some sort, because a missile would seem so outdated. I mean, the threat is real. We're in trouble. If these guys wanted to, man, they would run circles around us. If we were to associate them with a hostile takeover, a coup, if you will, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 least, 10 the worst, and 9. The intent as to what they're doing here, hey, your guess is as good as mine.
Well, we appreciate your service and your time.
Thank you for your service.
My pleasure. It was nice to meet all of you.
When somebody like Eric steps up, he's a straight arrow. He's here to tell you what he saw. Stories of UAP balls of light go back decades. In fact, I brought some photographs. This is a photograph from World War II era observations when they called them Foo Fighters.
During the Second World War, a number of pilots, US military but also British, reported strange balls of light following their aircraft. And at first they thought this was some new German or Japanese secret weapon, but they didn't seem to attack, so that theory didn't really hold up.
After numerous sightings by military pilots, the mysterious balls of light were soon known as Foo Fighters.
One radar operator was a fan of the old Smokey Stover cartoon strip, and the catchphrase was, "Where there's foo, there's fire." It was nonsense. And he was talking about one of these sightings, and he just threw down the cartoon strip and he said, "Well, I guess it's Foo Fighters." And the name stuck. Was this the fingerprints of another civilization watching us, watching our primitive little conflict? Did something about the Second World War attract attention from other civilizations in our little part of the galaxy? Maybe.
Let me give you a couple of examples. I brought a couple more photographs of a ball of light over Catalina Island, taken in 1947. And this is a still from Mr. Delgado's encounter last year.
Wow. Look how similar they look.
So these two pictures were taken over 70 years apart, and they virtually look the same.
Yes.
What do you think that they're monitoring? Is it our progress as humans? Is it our technology?
I think strategically they're here to occupy, and they're doing it as part of their overall pattern of colonization or expansion.
Are they a threat?
I would think so. They outmatch us on every level. They don't respect boundaries. We could find ourselves dealing with an extinction level event. It could be very bad.
If aliens decide to wage war and take over our planet, does humanity stand a fighting chance? Or will an invasion be the end of the world as we know it? After meeting with Ted Rowe and Eric Delgado, Rich believes we're at a critical point, and it's more pressing than ever for him to determine how aliens may carry out an attack. To further investigate the aliens' war plan, Rich has traveled to Texas to meet with Lieutenant Colonel Kent Johnson, a highly decorated retired Air Force pilot who may be able to help Rich understand the aliens' capabilities.
Again, thank you for coming forward. I know it's not easy for former military or current military people to come forward, but I do appreciate it.
It's more of a sense of obligation than anything else because of the most recent report that came out from Congress. And I figured, well, someone needs to know that this is not unusual and it is happening.
What was your first experience with UFO?
I was flying Southern Watch missions over southern Iraq, keep the Iraqi air forces down. And sometimes there's long stretches where you expand your radar out as far as you can get it, and I elevated it to the max elevation. And in my mind, I was just like trolling, like throwing a hook out there, see if I can catch something. So one time I caught a little blip on my radar, and I could just briefly see it was fairly high, but it was moving pretty quickly as well, but then it instantaneously stopped and it dropped straight down. So it was just booking away from me at a very high speed.
How high is booking?
Let's say it's over like 20,000 miles an hour.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not. That's my best estimate because I looked at the screen when I got the lock and that's what I saw, but then poof, it stopped to zero and went straight down.
Wow. And the second sighting, can you explain that to me?
In January 1991, Lieutenant Colonel Kent Johnson is on what he thinks is a routine training mission in Saudi Arabia during Gulf War I.
I was working with the U.S. Army. I'm in an OH-58 Kiowa helicopter. It's an unarmed observation two-place helicopter. Now, to give you a better idea of what that environment looked like, that's the type of desert environment. And you can see it's rather flat and featureless. That would be me, and there was the other pilot that was on with me during that mission. This picture right here was taken pretty much just before the incident occurred.
Lieutenant Johnson and his co-pilot are hovering 50 feet above the desert sand when suddenly, something from over a mile away demands their attention. An ominous shadow the size of a football field snaps towards them at over 1,000 miles per hour and disappears into the desert.
We were searching around, looking up and down. I couldn't see what was casting the shadow.
But then, the shadow returns, only this time with a vengeance, as it heads straight for Lieutenant Colonel Johnson's helicopter. Suddenly, the shadow mysteriously stops directly in front of them.
When it stopped, it was reacting to us, obviously, because we were getting in its flight path.
And it slams on the brakes.
It to zero. That thing violated what we understand the laws of physics to be. It'd be like running into a concrete wall or a granite mountainside at 20,000 miles an hour. It'll just splatter everything and everybody all around it.
Wow.
Let me show you something here that I think you'll really appreciate. To better describe what we were seeing as far as the shadow is concerned, the sharp edge, is if you envision something that's flying at altitude, the shadow becomes very blurred. But as it gets closer to the surface, the shadow becomes more sharp, more well-defined. And in this particular case, it was very well-defined, so it indicates it's very close to the ground.
Is it a threat?
That's a good question. A very good question, because we don't know. All I can say is that if they have hostile intent, what chance do we have, realistically speaking?
What do you think it was?
It could have been a cloaked UFO. The thing is, because we don't know exactly what it is and what makes it operated, who controls it, what kind of technology is involved, it could be a threat if it chooses to. Because how do you defend against something you can't see and you don't know how it operates? And we don't know what their intents are.
That scares the hell out of me.
Me too.
If UFOs can cloak and defy the laws of physics, our military is defenseless. But is this something the government already knows? And are we just sitting targets for when aliens decide to attack? After meeting with Lieutenant Colonel Kent Johnson, Rich realizes that the aliens' offensive capabilities outmatch any of our current technologies. If aliens decide to attack, we don't stand a chance. Not only can they take out the military, but our entire planet. Is this fateful outcome something the government already knows? If so, why are they trying to hide it? Someone who may know the answer is retired Air Force Staff Sergeant Jeremy McGowan. As the inventor of the world's first citizen-owned UAP tracker, named the Osiris, he's currently on his own pursuit to uncover answers the military is not telling us. Rich has sent Roderick Martin to meet with him in his hometown of Las Vegas.
Man, this is a cool vehicle, dude.
I appreciate it.
You're like this mad scientist. I'm gonna say this is like Ghostbusters to me, right?
This car has definitely been compared to Ecto-1 a few times. It's kind of the real-life version, except instead of hunting ghosts and goblins, I'm out looking for potential UAP.
Jeremy has traveled throughout North America with the Osiris, which is equipped with specialized radar, a magnetometer to detect any magnetic fields emitted by UFOs, and an accelerometer to identify movement in the sky.
The purpose of this vehicle is simply to uncover the truth that I think we will never get from the U.S. government. I was serving in the Air Force for about 12 years. We would normally get calls to pack our bag and get on an airplane and get deployed at no notice because we were a very high mobility base.
In March of 1995, Staff Sergeant McGowan is deployed to the Middle East to carry out a covert operation.
I got transported out into the middle of the desert, and the only things that were there was a tent and this big giant wooden crate.
At this moment, you're thinking what?
I didn't really know what to think. This was just straight up strange. Okay. I had participated in Desert Storm. I had seen combat over there, and this was nothing like what I had been accustomed to. But you're not supposed to ask questions, you're just supposed to do what you're told.
Now, is it common practice that you are briefed prior to going to a situation like that?
We didn't have anything. There was no paperwork, no nothing. My orders were don't get near the crate and don't let anybody else get near the crate. Like if they come near it, shoot them.
This was a serious order.
I was armed with 240 rounds of ammunition for my rifle, and I had 18 rounds of high explosive grenades with me as well.
Now, how long did this go on?
I was there for 3 days and nights.
Round the clock?
Round the clock. There's no supervision, there's no military officers walking around, there's nobody there, so I climbed on the crate, I sat on the crate, I laid down on the crate.
One evening, while guarding the mysterious crate, Jeremy has a life-changing experience he will never forget.
It is a crystal clear sky. You can look up and just see the entire Milky Way galaxy passing in front of you. I was just sitting there watching the stars with my night vision goggles, and as I was leaning back and looking up, I saw this bright point of light that came from my rear position, shot straight up, directly over top of me, made a 90-degree turn to the left, and shot off to my 9 o'clock in under 2 seconds. When it made the turn, there was no curve to the turn. It didn't slow down. Then it started repeating, and it went over and over and over again.
Wow. So what are you thinking now?
I don't know what to think at this point. I mean, I just saw something that defies my understanding of the laws of flight physics.
Could have been a falling star.
Falling stars do not make right-hand turns.
Okay.
Not at right angles. There was no aircraft because we're in a restricted no-fly zone. It was a dead zone for air travel.
So now that you saw this needs to be reported, right?
I couldn't tell anybody.
For years, Jeremy wonders what exactly was in that crate. Was the mysterious UFO sighting in the Jordanian desert somehow connected to its contents? In 2019, Jeremy finally gets an answer, which also points to a government cover-up.
I end up uncovering a guy who was attached to SEAL Team 4. He told me details about that crate, that he was on the receiving end of that crate, and that the contents of that crate were actually a recovered nuclear weapon that had been stolen from the Soviet Empire during the collapse at the end of the Cold War. To be specific, it was an SS-24, which is capable of holding 10 warheads. He stated 8 of them were in place. About 9 years ago, I was diagnosed with a very specific and rare form of skin cancer that is only caused by exposure to radiation.
Wow.
Since his cancer diagnosis, Jeremy no longer trusts the government, especially the military. To this day, he wonders, what else are they hiding? The government's attempt to cover up the threat in our skies has been documented throughout history. But now, recently leaked footage reveals a new alien craft stalking our military, making the truth harder to hide. Unidentified submerged objects, or USOs, is the official name given to these strange anomalies lurking deep within our oceans. And with our nuclear-powered submarines and aircraft carriers at sea, where there's water, there could be alien firepower. If anyone knows about deadly threats hiding underwater, it's retired U.S. Navy Chief Warrant Officer Carson Shoemake. He served on nuclear submarines, including the USS Tennessee and the USS Pennsylvania, and has agreed to meet with Rich to help him hypothesize what the aliens might be planning.
Carson, in the course of our investigation, we found a lot of occasions where ICBM sites up north and in other parts of the world have been completely shut down, and there were UFOs in the area at the time. So in December of 1966, up at Minot, 10 ICBM missiles were disabled all at the same time. How is that possible?
I don't know that anybody, any nation-level government is even capable of that. If you thought it was another nation, that's an act of war.
So when we see things like UAPs coming over the United States, why don't we shoot it down?
You would never, from a military aspect, want to go pick a fight with something that you didn't even know what it was. You don't know what their capabilities are. If we just look at this from a logical standpoint, they're capable of intergalactic travel. What exactly are you going to shoot them down with? It's a pretty narcissistic galactic view to think that we're the only ones that are capable of intelligent thought and research and development and accelerated technology, and we don't even know how big the actual universe is.
You've served on submarines that were nuclear weapons capable platforms?
Yes.
Has there ever been anything out of the ordinary that you've seen?
Yeah, I've seen a few high-speed anomalies myself.
Underwater?
Underwater.
Wow.
So when you look at sonar, we have these waterfall displays. And so the way that you know that that thing passed so rapidly by you is it will have whipped from one side of the screen to the other.
Want to give me a baseline on an incredibly high speed?
It did not match even the capabilities of our system. It was faster than our system.
Right.
Which told me that there's something out there that's not what we would normally see. You got to remember, everybody's talking about, looking up UFOs. Nobody's talking about looking down into the water. I mean, if I was an intergalactic traveler trying to hide, I'd probably pick the water. And we don't even have the entire ocean mapped. There are large chunks of the ocean that we haven't even verified the contour of the bottom.
I've always thought that they were completely charted.
Nope.
You guys hear noises all the time.
Yes.
Take me underwater and let me hear what sounds sound like on the sonar.
I've got a few on my phone now. Every sound I can't share with you because some of them are going to be controlled and classified. Like this one right here is, that's a whale.
Wow, that's louder than I expected.
And then we have another one that is actually a ship's propeller noise.
You can tell.
It's pretty obvious. And here's one that was actually not specifically identified. Canadian military is actually the ones that uncovered it, and they called it a USO.
Does that sound like anything you've ever heard?
No, that just doesn't match up.
Does that give you some sort of pause?
Yeah, it definitely makes me curious. I would definitely want to know more information about it, you should always be concerned. You should always collect all data that's available and be prepared to analyze anything that your troops run across.
To learn more about USOs and their capabilities, Rich is sending Melissa Tittle to meet with someone who actually came face to face with one during his time in the U.S. Navy. In 2010, Airman apprentice John Bauman is serving on the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier USS Carl Vinson as it heads for Haiti on a humanitarian mission. But little does he realize, this deployment will be one he will never forget.
So tell me about that day.
So on that day, it was a pretty calm day, not a lot going on the flight deck. And I just took a break. I was on the starboard side of the boat. And then I noticed below me, there was an object that resembled the shape of a tic-tac.
This isn't a submarine you've seen before. This is something completely different.
It didn't have a lot of features that could help distinguish it from like an actual submarine. Typically you have the mast of a submarine that sticks out of the water. In this particular situation, this was it looked like a solid object.
Can you show me what it looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. It was about 20 feet long, and it went from my left to right, and as it did it, the direction that it was moving, the front end of it, collapsed on itself, and it disappeared.
In real time, the tic-tac-shaped USO morphs into a horseshoe shape. Within seconds, it bolts away and disappears into the depths of the ocean.
Did you panic a little bit? How did you feel?
What I did next was I tried to forget what I had seen.
The strange encounter stays with Officer Bauman because he believes that our enemies, worldly or otherwise, are someone or something that we ignore at our own peril.
And if it was something not from this planet and they were checking out your aircraft carrier, wouldn't that also be a little suspicious as well? That they were doing it for nefarious reasons?
Well, I think you look at it the same way that we should be looking at our foreign adversaries. Obviously, if they got here from another planet, they're way more advanced than we are. However, the objective is the same. How do we defend ourselves against that kind of threat?
Is total annihilation of the human race imminent? Or is this something we can prevent?
Missiles launched.
Until recently, alien superintelligence has been largely off limits to serious scientific study. And while the government has silenced and ridiculed those who spoke openly about UFOs, this didn't stop famed theoretical physicist Michio Kaku, who believes aliens may be humanity's greatest threat. Dubbed the modern-day Einstein, Professor Kaku is considered one of the smartest people in the world and has agreed to meet with Melissa on this urgent matter to share some of his most shocking scientific findings.
I think we're reaching a tipping point. That is, traditionally, the burden of proof has been on the believers to prove that these objects were extraterrestrial. Now it's reversed. And now we have the smoking gun, where hearsay is now being replaced by military-grade videotapes, radar sighting, infrared sensor reports that we physicists can analyze frame by frame. This is a game changer.
Some of these encounters are off the charts, things that we understand currently in physics.
If they can reach us from the stars, they are thousands of years more advanced than us. We could be dealing with something that has a new law of physics involved. First, we know they can travel between Mach 3 and Mach 20, 3 times to 20 times the speed of sound. They can zigzag, creating G-forces several hundred times the force of Earth's gravity. That seems to violate most laws of physics, okay? And these objects can go underwater. And so we realize that we're dealing with a technology that pushes the very boundary of what we know about the laws of physics.
You mentioned USOs, which are the crafts that go into the water. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, what does water have that they may want? And that is, first of all, hydrogen. Hydrogen as fuel. And so, in other words, they're filling up their gas tanks. Oceans and oceans of fuel that could be used to fuel a starship.
Could there be another reason, possibly, that they're hiding?
They could do whatever they do, like maintain their equipment without being harassed by the United States military. The oceans would be an ideal place for them.
We've come across a couple stories where we've heard of cloaking, that these UFOs, USOs have the ability to cloak.
Any fan of Star Trek knows that these starships can cloak themselves and become invisible. And alien technology, they probably already mastered it.
But why are they here? You know, what do they want?
Look at the film War of the Worlds. Did the Martians hate us? No. What did the Martians want? They wanted our planet. That's all. We were just in the way.
Professor Kaku's sobering message could be a wake-up call to humanity that UFOs and USOs are something to fear, and that we need to prepare for the day when they decide to strike.
The movie Independence Day, what did the aliens want? They wanted everything. Every scrap of energy or resource. They were locusts. Locusts that come in like bugs and just take everything in sight. If push comes to shove, and we have to fight them. And in the worst case scenario, we're simply outgunned, outmanned, and we become a footnote in the history of the Milky Way galaxy.
When there is a potential adversary in our skies with technology that goes way beyond anything we have, how could there not be some fear? What if this suddenly accelerates from being a war of nerves to a real shooting war? If they don't have our best interests at heart, we're in trouble.
We have seen their deeds, we've seen the things that they've done. If we ignore this, we're doing that at our own peril.
The UFO phenomenon, it affects all of us. My only hope and prayer is that we are prepared.
The next step is not going to be we come in peace. This feels like war.